Hey viewers, my name's Cara. My pronouns are they and she, and I am currently on the land of the Oodom Tosh in the Sonoran Desert, but I am not from here, as you may know if you've been watching my channel for any amount of time. And if you have, then you also know what this video is. I mean, you know because it's in the title, but you would have been expecting it if you've been here for a while. This is my 2023 year in review. So as you know, most other years that I've done this, pretty much every other year of my life, and every other year that I've done this, I have not been in the desert. January 2023, I came out here to stay with my mother for what I thought was going to be 3 or 4 months max. That did not turn out the way that I thought. I'm still here. I'll keep you posted. We're trying to figure stuff out. And before we go too much further, I am just going to go ahead and say, today is not the ideal day that I would normally be recording. I feel like my energy is really, really low. There are multiple reasons for that. But it has been so difficult for me to find days and times of the day that it makes sense to record here because of noise, disturbances, interruptions, all kinds of things. And so today is the first day in a while that I have felt like, other than my own energy and how I feel, the other conditions are good for recording. So I need to try to get this done. Hello from editing mode several days later. The funny thing is, rewatching this now, my energy seems fine. I sound fine. I am sure that none of you could even tell. And that's a lesson for me, because in that moment, I felt like crap, and I felt like I looked and sounded like I felt. And watching it back now, no, I actually appear fine from the outside. So that's just also a lesson for me that maybe you can't tell how bad I feel if I just do it anyway. But also a lesson to all of us that, like, somebody might look fine, but actually they are really struggling and feel terrible. But anyway, it's good to see that the energy that I thought I was giving in the video is not actually what came through. And that's good, because I literally almost re-recorded this video because I thought it was going to be so bad, but I'm glad it's not. So enjoy. Because I have some other videos that I'm excited to do next, but my own self-established rule is that the first video of the new year is the year in review. It is a self-established rule, and it didn't always used to be like this. The year in review used to be the last video of the given year that it was in. Then at some point I started doing it as the first video of the new year, talking about the year before. So things can change, but for now this is still my tradition. So January I came out here to the desert. I traveled across the country in my car with my 2 cats and my partner. I didn't drive by myself, but I traveled for days in a car with my 2 cats, and that was a learning experience, I will say. I got to hang out with Wendy Rule on the way out here, though. That was nice. We stayed with Wendy for one night on the way out here. And I started doing regular meetings for the ritual team. I am on the ritual team, or I was for the past 2 years. I'm not always necessarily, because it's a role that rotates and changes depending on who wants to do it. For the last 2 years, I've been on the ritual team for my regional witch camp, so I was already in meetings for that in January, as soon as I came out here and kind of got settled and figured out this little situation in the corner here for my desk setup. So that's the majority of what was in my calendar. When I go back through my planners and things to find out what was I doing throughout the previous year to do this video, most of what was in my calendar was meetings. Meetings to plan rituals, which is lovely. And then in February, there was an online camp. There has been an online thing every year since the pandemic, and lots of other communities are doing online things now as well. So I've been to a couple online camps, and I'll talk about the other one later because that wasn't February. February I did online camp, and the previous few years that I've attended that online event, I wasn't actually able to attend the rituals themselves, like the opening ritual, the closing ritual, because those tended to be on weekends when I was working. So I would go to a lot of the other offerings on weeknights, but I had never actually been able to do the rituals themselves. And so this time in February, I was able to do the rituals. So that was really cool. I also went to the Desert Botanical Gardens in February. I was really excited to do that when I first got out here because there are so many plants out here that I didn't know the names of. And I felt like, being a person whose practice is very based in the land where I am at the time, I wanted to be more connected to this land. Although I've been here a couple times and I know some of the plants and some of the animals, there were still a lot more that I didn't know. So I was excited to do that. The electricity in my room also stopped working in February in 2 out of the 4 outlets that are in this room. My desk is in this corner of the room, the outlet that is right there, and the outlet that is right on the other side of this wall. The 2 closest outlets to the desk don't work. And it's been almost a year and we're still trying to get somebody to figure out why. There's like no reason. It's so weird. The other 2 outlets do work though, so I just have like extension cords. And right at the end of February, I came down with COVID for the first time because my mom got it and passed it to me. And I knew that was going to happen at some point. I had avoided it for 3 years, knew it. So that happened at the very end of February, beginning of March. And I was the most sick I have ever been, truly. I did do a little bit of traveling after I recovered from sickness. Went to visit an art museum. March was also the celebration at the equinox of my 20th witchiversary. I've been a practicing witch for 20 years-ish. The way that I count it is I look back to the first Sabbath, the vernal equinox in this case, that I remember celebrating with a group of other people. I was 12. 2 of the stray cats that were born here under my mom's house had kittens in March. There were other kittens that came later in the year, but those 2 were a week apart, had 2 litters of kittens. So I got to witness many little kitty births, and that was really lovely. In March, I also started working more with my Lenormand deck, which I had acquired a couple years before that, but hadn't really started studying and working with. So I started doing that in March. I did a little bit more of that this year. In April, there are some things that throughout this entire year that I might have written in my planner, but I'm not going to mention, by the way. So a couple of these don't have a lot of things that I'm going to mention, but it's just highlights. In April, I attended the second ritual for my local community back in Ohio. We did it online, and that is when I made this friendship bracelet that has some different magics woven into it, and I've had it on my wrist ever since. And I also started reading To Ride a Silver Broomstick in April. I finished it in June, and that was part of the charm school project that I was doing with my friend. I'll talk more about that in a bit too. So May, lots of community meetings, lots of working group meetings. I was still doing meetings for the ritual team and everything. And in May is when Stella and I recorded the first video talking about the charm school project that we were going to be starting in June. I also did a little bit of traveling in Arizona with a couple of my friends who lived out here at the time. They're not here anymore, but I went to some places with them where they were going to be doing some shopping for art and stuff. And I didn't do much shopping, but I really enjoy looking at art and hanging out with my friends. So we did that. In June is Pride Month, more meetings. Stella and I started charm school. So I started doing a bunch of things for that. I hung out in Phoenix, Arizona for a little bit with some of my friends. I was watching the neighbor's dog a little bit during this month. I started redoing some of the stuff for my online business, which I still now, over 6 months later, am still working on. But, you know, we do it as we can. It's on the list. And then I was back in Ohio for a little bit to prepare for camp. So from June into July, I had a combo ritual with my local community and then our next closest neighboring community in Pennsylvania. Some of us got together and sort of met midway to do a ritual together, which was really awesome. And then, of course, we also had camp. So I was back there. I was back east for a few weeks surrounding that. Before I left, I got to hang out with a friend who was also in town for a little while before they were going to move out of the area. So it was like the only time we were both in the same place before we were both about to leave again. So we got to hang out and talk about witchy things and queer things and all kinds of wonderful things. Then on the way coming back, my flight was delayed, and that's the first time I've ever had a flight delayed, period, but it was delayed 18 hours. So I also had to like stay an extra night, and luckily that worked out. It was fine. I got the notification before we left for the airport, so I was still at dinner when I got the notification. Otherwise, it would have been really annoying to like get there and then realize that I was gonna have to spend the night there or something. Like, yeah. On my way in the airport, I met a woman from the Peace Corps. I was wearing like probably a pentacle or something like I do, and she started talking to me about witchcraft, and like she knew somebody whose daughter was a witch or something like that, and she never really understood it, so she always thought it was kind of weird. But like we had hit it off in the security line at the airport, and so she already kind of like liked me, I guess, and we had been talking for like 20 minutes by the time she brought it up and was like, so are you a witch? And then like started asking me about it. So just a random, very nice interaction with a lady from the Peace Corps. And I don't remember her name. I want to say it started with an R, but not that she would ever be watching this video for any reason, but you know, just good vibes to that person. I hope she's doing well. When I finally actually got back here, I started pulling a card of the day, and I've always done that kind of on and off over the years. Like I'll do it for a period of time and then I sort of fall away from it. But I started doing a card of the day when I got back, and I've done it every single day since then for months. Like this is definitely the longest that I've ever done it. And I've been using that as a basis for starting to work on building a daily practice that works for me, because as you all know, I've always talked about the fact that I don't really do anything daily, but I have regular practices. But I've been trying to come up with what actually would work for me to do every day, and like how could I make that work. So it seems to be going well so far, but that started when I got back. August is my birthday month, as you may know. I went to karaoke with my mom. My mom is a karaoke hostess, so I went to one of her karaoke shows right before that.
Go ahead, Mother. Okay, daughter.
I guess she told all of her friends that it was going to be my birthday, so a bunch of them showed up, which was really sweet. Like some of her singers came from an hour away from a different show that she does in a different town on a different night of the week. They drove up on a totally different day to be there because I was going to be there. So that was really cool. I did some more work on my online business stuff in August. I took an online class with Lee Harrington, who was doing something about queer magic, and I just happened to see it and I was able to sign up for it. Like, I'm pretty sure I saw it like the day of, and I was like, oh, I'm free at that time, I'll sign up. And I got the link and I got to do it that day, which is very cool. Lee Harrington, if you don't know, is one of the editors of the anthology Queer Magic Power Beyond Boundaries, which I finally finished reading in 2023, by the way. And I met Lee Harrington at some point in 2022. So that was really cool to get to catch one of their online classes too. I had some online birthday hangouts with people over my birthday week. I did one with my Reclaiming People, my local community, and some other friends that I invited to hang out online. And there was actually a storm that day that came in and knocked out my internet. So most of them were sitting there in like a video call, hanging out with each other, waiting for my connection to come back enough that I could come back to my own birthday party. But it was fine. They all knew each other from camp, so it wasn't like super awkward. Like I just left a bunch of people who don't know each other together in a video call. But yeah, that was annoying. And then the next day I had one for my Patreon supporters, and a few folks showed up to hang out for that, and we had some very interesting and very all over the place conversations. I also went to an art museum in August for my birthday, and a musical instrument museum, which was really, really cool. I love museums. I don't know if you knew that about me, but I love going to museums and botanical gardens and things like that, historical sites, for my birthday. So I got to do a few of those things throughout the year. In September, another litter of kittens, I think, had been born in August, but their mother like kept them hidden outside, so they didn't actually come out for us to see them until September. So there was another litter of kittens in September to hang out with. Some of them, by the way, have now been taken to the shelter and they've been adopted out, the kittens, and the mothers have been fixed. So no more kittens, finally. But that was a whole thing throughout the year, like big kitten saga. And there's a lot of cat vlogs that I've been sharing on Patreon. I have more that aren't even posted yet because I just have so much cat footage and like kitten stuff that I haven't edited all of it yet. So there's gonna be more random cat vlogs, but I'm doing that on my Patreon. I'm not posting a bunch of that like here. So anyway, community meeting in September. I started doing an online Iron Pentacle class. Iron Pentacle is one of the core classes of reclaiming tradition. It comes from the fairy tradition of witchcraft, which the Andersons spelled F-E-R-I to differentiate it from other types of fairy craft. But I did an online Iron Pentacle class for 6 weeks, so that was in September and October. I hadn't done an official Iron class since 2016, so it felt like it was about time to do that work again. And it's also the anniversary of the Ohio community that I started, the first time that a bunch of us actually got together and did ritual together in person was 2 years ago in September. So we had our anniversary in September. I recorded another chat with Stella for Charm School where we were discussing one of the books that we read together. I am still working on editing that video. It's over 2 hours of raw footage, and I did not know some of the tricks that I know now about audio recording, and I didn't realize at the time how different my volume was compared to Stella's. So it's been taking a lot longer to edit that video because I'm also manually adjusting the volume to make it not drastically different. Now I know there are ways that I can save myself from doing all of that work in the future, but I didn't know it at the time, and we're not going to re-record a 2-hour conversation. So I'm just taking my time editing it. When it's finally up, it'll be there, but it's taking some time. So there's that. I also had an interview with a divinity school student in September. A couple summers ago, I had a mentorship situation where I was mentoring a divinity school student, Madeline, and I did a video with her, so you might have seen that. And if not, you can go back and watch that. But that was for a summer internship sort of situation that she needed for her degree program. It was during the time when they were allowing them to do online work study type things because of the pandemic. So she wanted to work with me, and that was really cool. That was a really awesome thing that I got to do. And so this other student is someone who knows Madeline and reached out to me to interview me for a project that they're doing where they wanted perspectives of different spiritual and religious leaders from different types of non-Christian religions. So I got to talk to them a little bit about my path and my practice, which is very cool. In October, I was still doing Iron Pentacle. I also restarted doing a 12 Wild Swans book discussion group with my local community. I've facilitated that a couple times now. We had done the Elements Path together 2 years ago, and we intended to do the whole book 2 years ago, but life happened, so that didn't work out. This time we were doing it a little bit differently. We're doing live chats as well, which I think is really cool and adds to it. So we restarted the Elements Path in October. We finished that in early December. Now we're doing the Inner Path currently as I'm recording this in January, and then we'll move on to the Outer Path sometime in the spring here in the Northern Hemisphere, spring. So the plan is to continue the way that we've been doing and actually finish doing the whole book together, which will be really nice. Then at the end of October, of course, we have Halloween. My partner and I went to Sedona, and we went to Sedona 2 years ago when I was out here visiting as well, and we did kind of the touristy, like up and down the strip going to the shops part of it 2 years ago, but we didn't actually do any of the going hiking part of it. So that's what I wanted to do this time. I was like, I want to go back to Sedona, but I want to hike. I want to see some of the red rocks, some of the vortex sites, that kind of thing. So we did. We only ended up doing one vortex hike, although we tried to go to some others, and so we drove up and sort of, got the idea of the space of a couple others. But some of the others are so crowded. And I was just like, no, I'm good. So the only one that we actually went to and hiked was Bell Rock. And I thought it was gonna be super crowded and kind of weird of an experience, but it wasn't. it was really like, there were people, but it's so big and kind of expansive, and you can kind of make your own way up the rock whatever way. There's not necessarily just like one defined path to take. So there are people, but it was very spread out. So you had a lot of space. Beautiful views. I did feel some really good vibes. I stopped and meditated a couple of times at different levels. So I had a good experience, and I would love to go back and do some more. That's the one that I picked as my first, and it was very cool. So in November, we were continuing the Swans discussion group. The biggest thing, though, in November, I already have a couple of vlogs up on this channel, was Worldwide Witch Camp, the first online witch camp that was for everybody all around the world, 24/3, because not 7 days a week. It wasn't a whole week. It was an intensive over 3 days, but it was 24 hours a day, stuff going on in all time zones. So while some people were asleep, other people were doing path. But I hope that they do it again in the future. And so yeah, I did do 2 vlogs about Worldwide Witch Camp on this channel, so you will find those. It was a really good time, and I was a moderator for the Discord that was used as kind of the community gathering space for that. So I've been doing a lot of that type of work since then. Other big thing that happened that month, thanks to my Patreon supporters having knowledge of technology, big shout out to Keith and Troy for helping me figure stuff out. I now have a mini controller for editing videos. And I'll probably make a whole separate video about it, honestly, because what a game changer. But basically, I mentioned in my Patreon Discord, which you get access to if you join my Patreon. It's another way to be in community there. I mentioned in that server that I have problems with my shoulder. Video editing was contributing to that because of the way that I have to sit to hit the keys to do the editing. And Keith was like, oh, there are things for that. And they recommended this little mini controller and a program that allows me to change the keybinds. So now I use a mini controller to edit. So I'm getting used to that as well, but it's been going really well so far. I'm enjoying it. I feel like that's a big thing because that's such a big game changer for how my workflow goes. So I've only been working with that for a couple of months, but I think it's going to make a big difference. That brings us to December of 2023. We had an online winter solstice ritual and gathering for my local community because, again, I'm thousands of miles away from them for the whole year. So I only got to participate in a few of my community rituals because not all of them had online participation. Hopefully we will rectify that in the future because there are lots of people connected to communities that can't necessarily show up in person. So that was really nice to have that connection with them to celebrate the holidays online. I had the house to myself over the main holiday week that you would think of, from solstice through almost all the way to New Year. I had the place to myself because my mom was out of town for the holidays, so I got to hang out just with my cats and all of the other cats and the dog, and it was lovely. It was so nice and restful. I got to read a lot more than I normally am able to because, again, the noise and the disruptions, all the same reasons that I cannot always record when I want to. I struggle to do a lot of other things with what is going on around here at all times. So I got to do a lot more reading, a lot more of my personal work that week, but also just relaxing. I did some personal ritual related to my personal theme for 2024, which there was also a specific place for in my Patreon and in the server connected to that. The winter solstice is also the anniversary of my grandmother's passing. You may also remember that if you've been here for some years. It's been 5 years now. So I got a bottle of wine that is a type of wine that she used to drink. Not a lot of specific types of wine, mind you, because Grams was very much like, wine is wine. She would just drink whatever. But kind of inexpensive type of wine that she would have pretty often in the house to celebrate and remember her as well as celebrate the solstice and everything like that. So it was a really lovely week. And somebody also had gifted my mom a pizzelle maker. If you don't know what pizzelles are, I guess people consider them an Italian cookie. I don't think I would ever think to call it a cookie, But I guess it is. Like, what else would it be? But Grandma used to make them all the time when I was a little kid, and I would help by just sprinkling the powdered sugar on the top. They're not always done with powdered sugar, but that's specifically like a wintertime thing because it looks like snow and they look like snowflakes. Anyway, so somebody had gifted my mom a pizzelle iron. So before she went out of town, we made a couple of batches of pizzelles. I looked up a vegan recipe. We got the ingredients that I needed. Flax meal as the egg replacer came out beautifully. And I actually just ate my last one that I made just the other day because we made a couple of batches of each and it makes a couple dozen in each batch. So that was also a really nice thing that I could do that was like ancestor remembrance as well. So that was my 2023. In the early years when I did these videos, I used to put up like stuff from social media and whatever, and I stopped doing that a while ago. And as you can see, I didn't do that again this time. But one thing that I used to do that I still like to try to do is wrap up a little bit like by the numbers. How many books did I read? How many movies did I watch? Things like that. So I managed to finish 18 books / graphic novels in 2023. Technically 19, but because I finished one on New Year's Day 2023, but I had read most of it in 2022. So I'm not counting that one, even though I technically finished it in the calendar year 2023. But I finished 18 other things. 3 of them were graphic novels, all of which I read digitally. 1 card deck guidebook, the Lenormand guidebook. 1 audiobook. 2 books that I partly read physical copies and partly listened to the audio, because that's a thing that I've realized helps me a lot. 2 ebooks, and then the rest of all those books were physical books. 2 of them were queer nonfiction, one of which being finally finishing the Queer Magic anthology that I mentioned earlier. 7 witchy / pagan nonfiction, including the Lenormand guidebook. 5 fiction. I didn't read any witchy or pagan themed fiction in 2023, which is already changing in 2024. The first thing I'm reading in 2024 is a witchy fiction. But anyway, 5 fiction books that were all non-witchy, non-pagan, and 4 nonfiction, non-witchy or pagan. So there's kind of like a grid, right? There's the witchy nonfiction and witchy fiction, and then there's the non-witchy nonfiction and non-witchy fiction. Of the 3 graphic novels, and not just like graphic novel, but like there was a whole graphic novel series that was like 30 issues, and I just checked yesterday and realized 2 more issues have come out since I finished those, so I'm really excited to read those next. But anyway, so like a 30 issue series, and then another one was 9 issues, and then another one that I read was just like a single, it might have been like 5 issues in a single volume, I don't know, but it was a single thing to check out on Hoopla. I didn't have to check out multiple things on Hoopla for all of these. But anyway, of the 3 like graphic novel / graphic novel series, 2 of them were fiction. 1 of them was actually nonfiction because I read Joe Sacco's Palestine graphic novels, which is like graphic journalism in graphic novel form. But the word novel sort of implies fiction, so it feels weird calling it a graphic novel because it's graphic journalism. I didn't really watch any shows during the year. I don't have any streaming services, and my mom doesn't really have streaming services, but she watches a couple of things. Earlier in 2023, she was watching a show called Vegas that I watched pretty much all of with her, so I've seen Vegas now. And I finally watched Over the Garden Wall. So those are the 2 like new shows that I watched, I guess. I'm sure there were a couple that I was forgetting, but I probably saw less than 20 movies total in 2023. 14-ish of which were new to me. 5 of which are things I have seen before at some point, but like so long ago that I really wanted to rewatch them. And only 3 of which were actually like new movies. I went to see Barbie in theaters my birthday weekend. And then I also saw A Haunting in Venice and Elemental. Those are the only 3 movies that I saw that were like new movies that just came out in 2023. And like I said, it's ish because I feel like there's other movies that I saw that I just wasn't remembering. But sometimes in my planner for the day, I'll write down like, oh, I watched this movie today. Like this movie's free on YouTube, so I watched it, right? So I watched a bunch of things because they were free on YouTube that I probably wouldn't have had the occasion to get a chance to watch otherwise. Like, for example, I actually had never seen But I'm a Cheerleader before. So I think that's the first, like, free with ads on YouTube thing that I watched because I saw it come up in my recommendations, and I was like, you know, I've never actually seen that. And then I was like, I should look at what other things are on here. So I watched other movies occasionally that way. But yeah, still just like maybe 10 of them total throughout the course of the year. I don't know. At some point in October, I watched the Addams Family movies, one of which I had seen before, one of which I had never seen before. So yeah, and as far as plays, I did not read any plays in 2023. I also did not see any plays in 2023. I haven't seen a live play or a musical since before the pandemic. And for the first couple of years when I could have, like it was a thing again, it was a personal choice. I wasn't ready to be back in those spaces. And for this year, it's just like, it didn't come up. But I did watch a couple of movie musicals, ones that I had seen before, Les Mis and Rent, two of my faves. And listening to soundtracks, oh, if I could even go into the stuff that I listen to. I don't really use Spotify because I don't pay for it, but I did use Spotify a lot when I had like the free month trial. Pretty much all I listened to was stuff that I actually own physical CDs of, but that are back in Ohio. So normally I would put them in my CD player and listen to them while I do stuff around the house because I just want to listen to the same stuff. I don't listen to a lot of new things, but when I had Spotify, I wanted to catch up with Kesha's discography, the things that I hadn't heard yet. And I can already tell you for 2024, the album that I have already listened to multiple times is Kesha's Rainbow. I love it. But yeah, Kesha was my top artist on Spotify of 2023, but I only used Spotify for like a month. But I still mostly listened to Kesha. And then there was like Good Charlotte and Hello Goodbye was in there, and Vanessa Carlton. Because those are things that I already listened to that I own CDs of, but I just don't have those CDs with me. So I just look them up on Spotify. Or really, I just listen to things on YouTube. So I don't have like the full-on countdown of how much I listened to what, but I don't listen to music a lot. I put on a CD when I'm doing stuff around the house. For the most part, I don't even really get to do that. But I also got some new CDs since being out here at a local thrift store, so I listened to some of those as well. Anyway, that is my 2023 year in review. I have had to record this in 4 parts because for some reason my phone will only let me record 10 minutes at a time. I don't know why. I've cleared everything else off my phone, but it only has 10 minutes worth at a time. So it's about to cut me off. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time. Until then, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye. Information about my Patreon and other ways to support me and find out what I'm doing elsewhere are in the description of this video. Have a lovely 2024.